right, we are here with our guests, Mr. Fred Van Lente and Ryan Dunlavey.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, man, really appreciate it. You know, Fred basically said what Dan Slott said, feed me. And instead, here we are. Yeah.
He's very easy.
One pizza later, we're doing the podcast.
Comic creators are simple. I like this.
So with all of our new guests on the show, we like to start off with two questions. First, how did you first start reading comics, and what were the events that brought you to Comic Book Jones?
Who's going to go first?
Well, your story is way more interesting.
Why is
than
my-
mine is.
wow, I
Because
started
where
reading
you
comics?
started reading comics.
I started reading comics because I didn't have access to television and
This is
movies.
Ryan speaking.
I'm
right
Ryan.
now.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? I didn't have access to American comic books and movies because I moved to Hong Kong when I was 12 years old.
What?
And the only way I could get any kind of pop culture entertainment was at the PX that had sold American comic books.
So are you an Army brat?
I'm not an Army brat, but my
Okay.
parents had a membership with basically the USPX
Oh, okay.
in Hong Kong, and I would go down there like 2 times a month and just buy everything, literally.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got. And this is like '83, and like Secret Wars had just started.
Yeah.
And I read comic books, but I knew some of the characters, but like I saw that comic there one time, and that comic like, oh my god, everybody's in one comic at one time.
What was the ratio there from like Marvel to DC books?
It's mostly Marvel.
Mostly Marvel.
Strangely,
Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting.
They didn't have very many. It was almost all Marvel. And
Okay.
they had some first comics too.
Oh, really?
So
First.
they had.
So they had Badger?
They had Nexus. They had Badger. They did not have Superman.
Okay.
It was kind of weird.
That is
But, yeah, but I was mostly into Marvel.
So
I
what
was like-
what DC did they have though?
They had Atari Force,
Oh, okay.
which I loved.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And but they didn't have Batman. They
Mhm.
had weird. They had the esoteric stuff. They had Swamp Thing. They had Atari Force, and like,
Okay.
I can't remember the other ones. But yeah, I remember being into Spider-Man and X-Men and Power Pack, and
Mhm.
those were the ones I really liked the most.
So the ones that say you would go, you get a stack, you know, after maybe you went a few times.
Yeah.
What went to the top of your stack?
X-Men went to the top. Atari
X-Men.
Force went to the top.
Okay.
G.I. Joe went to the top.
Mhm.
I found G.I. Joe in Thailand of all places.
Wow.
So I was on a family road trip,
Mhm.
and at the hotel they had 2 American comic books. They had the A-Team and they had G.I. Joe. And it was
Mhm.
G.I. Joe 21, and which
Right.
is like the silent issue.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And I was like, I knew about G.I. Joe, but they didn't have the cartoons there, and
Mhm.
I saw it. And I was like, this is so.
It's a weird introduction to a book when there's no words.
Yeah. But I loved it. I knew exactly what was going on.
Especially in
Yeah, it was
another
so cool.
country, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So was
And then when I went back, I went to the PX and I knew the people there at that point, and I was like, you have to order this comic, you have to order G.I. Joe, and they eventually did a couple months later.
So
It was an army base, so hopefully that was
that
wasn't a hard
That was
sell.
the weird
Yeah.
thing, was that was
Yeah,
an army
sure.
base, it was a mall inside of a skyscraper
Okay.
that only like American and British soldiers were allowed to go to.
Really?
Yeah.
So with that was Larry Hama an early influence?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
It must have been.
I mean, whose artwork were you drawn to? Do you remember?
I loved Bill Sienkiewicz.
Okay.
Early on, because it was, actually that was it, New Mutants.
Yeah.
When he started drawing that, I was collecting the X-Men, and my brother got the New Mutants, and Bob McLeod was drawing it
Mhm.
at that time, and I was kind of like, yeah, go ahead, draw, pick that. And then Bill Sienkiewicz started drawing it. I'm like, what is this? This is
Yeah.
insane. And that was when I first became aware that like people drew this, and
Mhm.
like because it looked like somebody actually used their hands and messed it up and made it crazy.
I remember a
So
lot
loved
of
it.
people, you know, when I was a kid around that time too, dropped New Mutants when Sienkiewicz first came on because like it was like, nah, I don't like this artwork. Like I'm scared. Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like they just,
I was
yeah.
totally.
I loved it.
I loved it.
Yeah.
And I got a chance to tell Bill that like 3 years ago.
That's awesome.
And because he just happened to be sitting right next to me,
Mhm.
I'm like, "You're the guy who started
Drawing
getting me
fan
drawing."
Yeah.
it's drawing fan art. So you're the guy who started getting me drawing.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So was it for you? Was it was it an immediate thing that you were like, you know what? I want to be an artist.
I
wanna
just
draw.
wanted. Well, first I just wanted to copy his drawings because they
Okay.
were so cool. And but then after a while, I was like, wait a minute, I've always been able to draw.
Mhm.
I can just do this, and I just started doing it out of my head rather than copying from people. And I started drawing people from life. And by the time I was 15 and I moved back to the States, at that point, it was the only thing that interested me in school.
Yeah.
And I kept doing it.
I mean, one thing I would say that you have in common with Sienkiewicz is your art, to me, is instantly recognizable.
Yeah, I don't think
I know
anything
that
like
you're
it.
all-
I mean, totally.
I'm not saying that it looks anything, but
Yeah.
I'm saying like Sienkiewicz, it's completely unique. I mean, like even like Evan Dorkin. I see that. I know it's Evan's work. You know what I mean?
Thanks.
And same thing with yours. No, yeah. And
It
to
took,
me, that's
it
what
took
I
a while
look
to
for.
get for me to get there. I was imitating people for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
I think everybody does.
Yeah.
That's pretty common.
that's true.
What about you, Fred?
My dad was like a casual comics fan. He was a huge Will Eisner fan. Like he loved the Spirit.
Oh my God, yeah.
And so he was given at one point, I know this because there was a description in the book, Eisner had a assistant named Jules Pfeiffer who went on to be this huge Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist and author of graphic novels, Tantrum. But he did a book called The Great Comic Book Heroes. He wrote an essay in the New Yorker in about 64,
That was a big hardcover.
Yeah, it's a big hardcover.
You know what's can I just tell you? This
Yeah,
is
sure.
really weird because my wife Joanna stopped at a yard sale when I was convalescing last week and brought me back a book, and it's that book
Yeah.
that you're fucking talking
Yeah,
about.
totally.
That's so crazy.
I have a smaller paperback version that was reprinted.
No, she brought me the big oversized hardcover. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
She got it for like 50 cents.
Yeah, this is like, my dad had like the original first edition, and so it was this essay, this very humorous essay that Will Eisner wrote about growing up at the comic shops after the war in the late 40s, but then it also had reprinted all of the early Golden Age hero origins. So you had Hawkman and Batman and Superman and Green Lantern,
That really creepy Joker.
the really
First
creepy
appearance,
Joker,
oh my
sure.
God.
There was the original timely Captain America, Human Torch, Submariner, and the Spirit was also in there. To think a couple Spirit stories. So I loved this book, and I literally read it until I fell apart. Actually, I tried to make my mother read it, and I did get her to read it to me, but like every night I wanted more. Like I wanted her to do it again.
Yeah.
And after God knows how many times of me begging her to do it, she was like, enough already, and just stopped doing it. She's like, you've got to move on to other books. But I was so obsessed with this one book, I kept staring at the pictures and the words until I put the two together, until I could like read at a much higher level, like when I went to kindergarten. And people were like, how'd you do this? And she's like, well, I guess the book's not so bad.
Do you own a copy any longer?
I have the exact same copy.
Awesome.
I have the exact same copy. Both covers have fallen off.
It's amazing.
Younger me drew all the heroes in crayon all over it, but it's the exact same copy.
Because I was going to say, if it's gone, I would inscribe mine.
I'd
and pass
appreciate
it
that.
along.
I have the actual one with the
After I'm done
birthday.
with it, of course.
With the birthday inscription of my dad on it. And what's interesting about the Pfeiffer essays, this was sort of the first period in the 60s when Marvel was starting to get really big, that people were sort of rediscovering superheroes of the 30s and 40s. Because they had really fallen out of favor by that point.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of characters that hadn't existed yet that, the first time a lot of kids in the 60s could interact with them was through that book.
Yeah. Like, Captain America.
Captain Marvel.
We've Captain Marvel, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Marvel's in there? I don't remember. Maybe
I don't
it
think
is.
so.
I don't think it is.
No.
I think he's mentioned, but there might have been like a rights issue about getting.
Yeah, that was the weird gray period where DC hadn't acquired the license to Captain Marvel.
So out of that, did your favorite character or a favorite creator come out of that?
Well, after that, like again in the mid-70s, Pocket Books started reprinting all the Kirby and Ditko and Lee Marvel. So I really gravitated towards Spider-Man and the Hulk and Fantastic Four from those reprints. And so,
like Sons of Origin.
well, there's that the Lee
Those are
books,
the Fireside books?
But then that's Fireside. But Pocket Books did the actual just the comics.
Yeah.
They did them at regular paperback size. And so that was sort of that. The Pfeiffer book was sort of the gateway drug, and then the Marvel stuff was like the hard stuff, right?
Okay.
So in my early childhood, I kind of went through the first 30 years or whatever of superhero history,
Right.
And then so by the time I got older, I almost didn't want to get off the stands like Hulk and Spider-Man because I was like, I knew that already,
Right.
the originals, so I was interested in following them.
But did Stan Lee's writing jump out at you? I mean, like, just like I was asking Ryan, like, was there any certain writing early on that spoke to you more?
Yeah,
than
definitely. I
somebody
made like
else's?
little radio plays where I had this tape deck and I would read like the Spider-Man comics and do all the parts as
That's
different,
awesome.
as different voices and stuff, like Walter and J. Jordan James and all that stuff. But yeah, no, I love storytelling of any kind. But we moved around a lot, so I was kind of a lonely kid. So it was my dad was in the Army, and then he got his PhD in biochemistry, and then he interned at a bunch of various hospitals. So we bounced around a lot when I was really young.
Yeah.
So I think my sort of connection to the comics had a lot to do with that, was sort of a continuity, no pun intended, that was in my life that maybe wasn't there ordinarily because we were always bouncing around,
Right.
having new friends and all that stuff. And so it was definitely something that was sort of a bedrock for me.
So what's back home for you then?
You mean like geographic.
Yeah, like what do you consider that?
Ohio. I mean,
Ohio.
my dad ended up working at the Cleveland Clinic when I was 8, 9, something like that, and that's where I graduated high school, and you know, that's sort of where I grew up in the same town as Bill Watterson. Bill Watterson of Kalamazoo fame is from Chagrin Falls,
awesome.
so he's the most famous graduate of my high school. So like a lot of comics creators, Tony Isabella, Brian Bendis, Brian K. Vaughan, a whole bunch of people, Niccolo, the Marvel editors from that part of the country. We all sort of come from there.
Yeah.
It's the land where comics people come.
So when did you know you wanted to write?
Very early on. Initially I wanted to be a novelist when I was a kid, and then I went to school for screenplays, for screenwriting, for filmmaking, which I quickly found out I despised, because a lot of filmmakers just standing around fucking lights, talking to actors. There's a lot of like, all I cared about is the storytelling. No offense, anyone's here. But I was like, let's go straight to the storytelling, and I ended up falling in with this guy, because the founder of the comic book club at Syracuse University, by bizarre coincidence, was also from my hometown. Was also from Chagrin Falls, Ohio.
Really?
And so I ended up meeting guys like Ryan, who were studying to be illustrators in the arts program.
And then that was the impotence.
Yeah, I mean, you were like the editor one year, right?
Yeah, well, Matt was on his way out, and I was.
Yeah, he was a senior when I was a freshman.
Yeah, and then you came in after I'd been there for a little while.
Right.
And then I ended up
But you
being
were
the editor because nobody else.
Yeah, I was gonna say you were in charge at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the immediacy with which the guys like Ryan and Steve Ellis, who also went to Syracuse, I did a book with him called The Silencers later on.
I'm now from Dark Horse.
Man, I'm so glad that is. When I saw that was coming out from Dark Horse, I was like, yes.
Yeah, they did a spectacular job with it too.
That came out originally early 2000s?
Yeah, 2003.
I remember when it came out in Moonstone, I was working at Jim Henley's Universe, and I started hand selling it like crazy. I called up
Thank you.
Jim, and I was like, Jim, you really need to send me more to the Staten Island store of Silencers, because it's just so good, and we moved a lot of them.
That's good, because I went to another store, which I won't name, and I tried to get a copy of that, and they're like, yeah, we hear that's a really good book. And that was it. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, The Silencers.
Which basically means that they've never heard of it.
Yeah.
Or they don't know what it is.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Silencers was the book that got me noticed at Marvel.
Yeah.
We've left forward in the timeline. But yeah, so what ended up happening was, this will sort of answer the second question. Steve he started working for Marvel and DC and Valiant and Malibu. Everyone remembers Malibu,
Steve
right?
Ellis.
Steve Ellis, sorry, yeah. Who
He was my roommate in college.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were in the same major.
And so he and I pitched something to Malibu that sold, and I dropped out of grad school because at this point I transferred from film because I hated it into English literature, and I was like, oh, this comics thing is easy. So I moved to New York with Steve and Ryan. You were designing T-shirts, right?
Yeah, but I was
in New Jersey.
I was designing T-shirts in Philadelphia.
In
And I
Philadelphia.
was getting tired of that.
Same
Like,
difference.
yeah, pretty much. And
Sorry, Philly.
I had a bunch of money saved up, and I just wanted to move back to a big city. After living in Hong Kong, I'm like, I'll go to New York.
Right.
And you were going, and Steve was going, and another friend of ours was going.
To be fair, Hong
I was
Kong's
like,
a big city.
It is a big city. I know. I wanted to go back, and so
And
I just sort of tagged along.
Yeah, well, I think we all tagged along with each
All
other.
four of us got a big place together.
And then the
It was like a
comic
sitcom that never took off.
Right, and then the comic book industry collapsed,
Yeah,
and
pretty
Marvel shut down Malibu, and it took a good 8-9 years before I got that Marvel credit, but that was because Steve and I kept working on our stuff off and on. Ultimately, Ryan and I ended up doing stuff
What was the
together.
Malibu story?
It was Silencers,
Oh, really?
actually. Shh,
Okay.
don't tell Disney. Oh, the Malibu stuff is tied up in such crazy contractual stuff. They'll never catch us.
So now, at what point what was the first time you guys worked together?
It was actually on this.
On
Well, no,
Xbox?
wait. We did a crazy role playing game together.
Right,
Which
and
tanked.
which a random kid at New York Comic Con
Yeah.
showed up with.
We did it.
No
In
way.
1997, it was called Superpowers. It was
I've seen that book before.
it was a
Yeah.
self-published role-playing game, just something we did on
which
our
is
own for
which
fun.
is just a bad idea.
Well,
That's awesome.
it's
do
not something you're
it's
gonna
not
get
the
rich
game.
by.
The game isn't a bad idea.
Right.
doing the Enterprise was.
Wait, Waffle, did you play the game?
No, I remember when I used to play Magic in neutral grounds in the city in town.
Yeah, Neutral Ground was big supporters of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had like a rack.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just
Oh,
remember,
really?
like flipped it through. I was like, this looks cool.
Yeah.
But that was when we were still doing D&D supplements, so we didn't make our own campaigns or our own
Yeah,
friends.
Right.
yeah.
Buy books that didn't say Wizards of the Coast on them because we were still new at it.
Right.
So I was like, whoa.
Stuart Brothers is essentially a parody of a role-playing game that was also a
Which I
playable role-playing
Which
game.
I would probably
Okay.
fall in love with now.
It was
So cool.
well. What I loved was the White Wolf guys. That was their like go-to game when they were in their cafeteria, and that was very cool when they told us that. It was you went out and had basically you generated incredibly idiotic superheroes with extremely useless, rude,
Stop recording this book.
or I forget
Yeah.
what the third one was ridiculous,
Ridiculous
powers.
powers.
Like create 3 cubic inches of mashed potatoes.
That's awesome.
Projectiles vomit.
See,
Yeah, I'm trying to bring
Stick
it
somebody's
Well,
head
we-
up their
we-
ass.
we-
Turn
that
anything
was-
clad.
We made powers. Stop
I've always said that my superpower is to shake exactly 2 astronaut a bottle at a time, no matter how many are in.
Right.
If there's one left, that's perfect.
Right.
My power that I came up with, I can make myself full at any time.
I think you guys hit the nail on the head why superpowers never really took off. Everyone kind of had their own version of it, which is great. But when you're young,
Yeah.
you don't really do these things. But we learned sort of the ropes of self-publishing that way, and I think that really did help us later on.
Definitely.
Particularly when
for
we
sure.
did Action
And you said that
Philosophers.
was 97?
Yeah.
97.
Okay. So that's something to look for.
So, and what were the events that brought you guys to Comic Book Jones?
Well, this book was Action Philosopher's book, which was we're celebrating our 10th anniversary with a brand new hardcover edition.
Dark Horse really pulled out of the stops, and then we're totally over the moon over it.
I think Ryan had the best quote when I saw you at Comic Con.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the books, I hadn't seen it yet, and I was looking through it, and you had said to me, you were like, it's so nice, I can't believe that I worked on this book, that this is my book.
Yeah, they made
Yeah.
my drawings look better than they actually are. How it happened,
So not true.
what kind of alchemy they used, but it's like, maybe because we chinched on it, it's why we self-publishing for so long.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's fantastic. I mean, Action Philosophers, I'm always curious what, you guys as creators, like, what's your quick pitch on it? If somebody's like, hey,
All the
what is
history's
this?
real, all the jokes are fake, all the philosophy's real, all the jokes are fake.
Okay.
It's the A-list History Brain Trust told in a hip and humorous comic fashion.
There you go. There you go. Done myself.
And when it started, do you want to tell the origin story?
Yeah, well, no, you tell it. I've been telling it over and over lately.
Sure. I was not at the table as much as I would like to have been here at Comic Con
Yeah.
this year. What happened was at SPX in Bethesda, Maryland, which is the big indie
Small Press Expo.
Small Press Expo,
Yep.
which is the big indie con on the East Coast, used to do an anthology, and so we were young and upcoming, or struggling comics creators. We wanted to break in.
I miss those anthologies. Those-
Yeah,
so
well, I can
much
see
fun.
why they stopped doing it. I'm sure they were a giant pain in the ass. But one year the theme was biography, and so Ryan asked my wife, who's a playwright, Krista Skillman, to do a story for him. And
She and I have been talking about it.
and you'd been talking about doing this for a while, and I sort of was like, but I want to work with Ryan. I do comics, you do comics. So I made her, beg. I basically begged her to say she was too busy and dump him on me.
You made your wife fly.
Well, it worked out. It did work, I think. So I've been reading a lot of Nietzsche because what you do when you're in your 20s, and so it occurred to me to be because Steve Ellis and I actually had been doing SPX comics, and we had done and it's fun because this makes the rounds on the internet every once in a while. Someone discovers it and it gets retweeted a gazillion times. William Gibson retweeted it once, started it once, which I was very happy about. The great cyberpunk author. So we were doing funny mini comics that made fun of various forms of comics, and one we did was a Jack Chick, like one of those religious track comics, except we did it for Cthulhu.
Okay.
And that was a big hit. And if you go to fredvanley.com and click on the comics link, you'll see it. I just posted it up there from my website, which is where people link to it all the time. So one of the kinds of comics we hadn't made fun of yet was those comics you used to get with He-Man and the action figures.
Yes. Okay.
So the gag of this strip was, this 8-page strip, was this was a biography, this was a comic about Friedrich Nietzsche you would get with your Friedrich Nietzsche action figure. Hence the term action philosophers. And so we did that, and we really liked it, but this anthology rejected it. But Ryan being the stubborn individual that he is,
I just
never gave up on it.
kept shopping it around until
Uh-huh.
finally I found somebody. It was a startup publisher that was going to do this newspaper like The Onion, but it was going to be all comics.
Oh, that's
Oh,
awesome.
okay.
Yeah, exactly. But and so he said, turn this into a series, and we did one on Plato,
Mhm.
and then we did one on Bodenharma,
Greater
and then he
symbolism.
wrote the one for Thomas Jefferson, and then they folded.
Oh, wow.
So we had 32 pages of comics, and nowhere to put them.
Yeah.
So we applied for the Zurich grant, which was started by the, after shopping around for a few independent publishers, because we're like, everyone in DC has published this. They all, everybody said like, oh yeah, that's nice, but it doesn't fit in.
Right.
Like Fantagraphics and Alternative Press was another one. But
Top
then,
Shelf.
Top Shelf.
It was Chris Staros who said you could
Top
apply
Shelf
for the
said
Zero.
apply for the Zurich
Oh,
grant,
really?
which used to be put out by the Ninja Turtle guys, well, Peter Laird. And they used to give grants to comic book creators, and we applied and got one. And they gave us enough money to publish 2 issues worth. So we published the first one, wrote and drew the second one, and we thought that would be it. But then people really liked it, and we did more. And then all of a sudden we did 9 issues.
So those first 2 issues, though, did they end up in Diamond and previews?
Yep.
They did.
They did.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
We used all sorts
And
of.
retailers really supported us, which we were kind of flabbergasted
Yeah.
and super grateful for.
Mhm.
And so yeah, we ended up doing it for a couple years and founded our entire empire of humorous nonfiction comics. And followed that up with comic history of comics. And now we're doing action presidents.
Comic book comics is one of my favorites.
Thank you.
I think I told you today. I would have brought my issues for you to sign, but I bought them here and they'd already been signed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is your 3rd time here each, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So what brought you here the first time? Where'd you guys meet?
It was comic book
I
comics.
think-
Oh no, we come for anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the
Anniversary
it was the
celebration.
4th or 5th anniversary.
Yeah, I can't remember if I met you or Fred first. I
It
don't
must
know.
have been Fred.
Yeah.
He just said,
We
we're doing a
first time we were
survey.
with John Lehman
Staten Island.
of Chew, fame,
Right.
and the second time we were with Charles. So
Right.
Yes.
Letter 44 just come
Yes.
out. And yeah, now we're here with the hardcover.
I mean, I think I'm pretty sure, Fred, that I met you through Ben McCool and Heidi McDonald.
I'm sure that's
Original.
quite possible. Yeah,
So.
they're good
I
buddies.
probably wasn't sober, and that's making it more even.
Always helps
Can't
to
remember.
meet people. You know?
Yeah.
Social lubricant.
Sure. Cheers. Done.
What have I done?
So when you guys did comic book comics, like I know that this is just filled with jokes, but is there like a certain passion behind the history of comics?
Oh yeah, very much
Sure.
so. Yeah,
Just
totally.
cover?
Well, we
'Cause I know
were.
there's a lot of unknown stuff that normally people walk around and have no idea.
Yeah,
that you guys touched on.
The thing I love about that book is Jack Kirby just comes off as like this awesome. He's like John McClane
Yeah.
in that book.
Yeah.
He's just this great action hero just punching his way through comics.
Yes.
Well, he's like the Forrest Gump of comics since he's been everywhere. You know,
Yeah.
he was Golden Age. He was.
That is
World
definitely
War
the
II.
first time I've ever heard Jack
He-
Kirby and
He's
Forrest
everywhere, you know, he's telling, you know, he's just kind of everywhere. You know, he's a romance comic. Exactly, not quite with the southern accent. Run a lot better, but at least initially. But yeah. I mean, he's sort of a nice themed, a nice spine to do the comics history around. And you can get that series now from IDW as a book called The Comic History of Comics.
Yeah.
Well, Fred, you wrote a play about Jack Kirby too.
I
right?
did, yeah. The aforementioned Crystal.
Yeah, wait, I actually overheard this while I was working on the invoice today, like in the store.
I bought one.
And I was like, what? Fred, what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
one from my girlfriend who's in theater, in like theater design and stuff. And she said today she's about a quarter of the way through it and is in love with it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And I didn't know that you guys presented it, and she's gonna be ecstatic that we can actually probably go see it.
Well,
Whenever you do it, if it happens again.
Yeah. We did it in Brooklyn for the Comic Theater Festival in Williamsburg, and we had a very nice time right up. The run sold out, which is awesome.
That's cool.
We're talking to other venues about doing it.
Awesome.
Chicago's looking like it's going to go next.
That's awesome.
That's very cool.
Very cool.
I saw that this had a performance.
Yes, Crystal
Yeah.
also adapted Action Philosophers into a play, which you can get from ChicagoDramaWorks.com.
No way.
Plug. And it's a great script, and she did a great job with it. And that was for the first Comic Theater Festival in 2011.
Cool.
Wow.
I gotta check this out.
That's
So now being married to a playwright, how different is the writing process?
It's different.
comics.
Well, it's nice because it's not like we're sort of stepping on each other's toes, so we can sort of read each other's stuff, but at the same time have that kind of distance
Right.
It's not quite all inside baseball all the time.
Yeah.
Share any similar like people inspire both of you?
Yeah, we both have really nasty sense of humor, and so we use each other quite a lot with that.
Okay.
But yeah, very much so.
Okay, good.
Do you like share a writing room where you both have different computers and you're just both clicking away?
We're lucky that we have 2 different rooms. That maybe would be a bit too far.
I can't think. You're clicking too loud.
I pace, she kind of punches over, so we definitely are not compatible in that sense.
It's like you finish a page and it's like, okay, you can do your page now.
Right.
Well,
Speaking of nasty,
Sharing one computer was kind of
speaking of your nasty sense of humor, I have to. I think it's a pretty good segue into Archer and Armstrong. Just the humor in that. I mean, I just, man, Archer and Armstrong it was one of my favorite original Valiant books. But since you've been doing it, issue 1. I mean, I know like Tony. I've got Tony into it. I just have to applaud you.
I like that.
I actually, a couple weeks before the podcast, I actually apologized to Fred for not reading it sooner.
It's all right.
Because of how great it was.
I forgive you. Don't worry about it. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, we've had a great reaction to it. It's a very unusual book. It's a very hard to pitch book. It's about 2 global conspiracy busters. One's a drunken immortal who's done everything and everyone, and Archer is this assassin who was raised in a Christian fundamentalist theme park. It's a creationist theme park, and they end up teaming up and going around the world battling various insane things you see on the internet.
I'm just curious. Everybody here, who's read Archer and Armstrong?
I read a few issues.
You got to get on it. You got to get on it.
Love it.
Put it in the bag.
Of all the work for hire stuff that Fred has done, it's the most Fred.
Yeah.
That there
Probably
is.
true.
Every time Armstrong is on panel, it's like hanging out with one of my drunk uncles.
I like to hear that.
That's a huge compliment.
That is. Thank you. But yeah, no, it's super fun. And the 25th issue, the final one, is out this month. All the runs wrap up, and it's a terrific, huge double stuffed issue. John Layman did a story, Chew fame.
that is
Gus
a rain
Jordan
outside,
did
man.
one.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Is that the rain?
Yeah, the rain is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
And
It's
it
audible
stopped.
on the microphone.
We don't have a
Yeah,
ceiling
yeah,
below our
yeah,
main
the
ceiling,
same
so
roof.
when it's you
Yeah.
hear it on the tin.
I
You
thought
know
it
the
was
rain.
just checking.
Yeah, we wanted the place to look like a warehouse where there might be a superhero fight.
Wait, so Archer is ending. Are you
Defending
writing more
yourself
for
from
Valiant?
zombies.
I am. One of Armstrong's brothers is Ivar the Time Walker, and he'll get a new series starting in January.
Okay.
But it's also me and Clayton, and we created Archer, this version of Archer and Armstrong together.
Awesome.
Now, were you a fan of the original book? Like, did you honestly? Did you read it?
Well, there lies a tale.
Okay, good. That's what we like tales.
I made my bones at Marvel doing a book with Greg Pak called Incredible Hercules.
Yeah,
Which was about Hercules, the Greek demigod, who pals up with a successor who turns out, much to everyone's surprise, to be Amadeus Cho, this irascible Korean-American teen genius.
Love that character.
Now, this may be a stupid question on my part.
Yes.
Did you create Amadeus?
I did not. Greg
Oh, okay.
did with a great
Greg did,
artist
okay.
named Takeshi Miyazawa, who's currently doing Turok with Greg for Dynamite. And that was building out of Greg's World War Hulk run, which is this big event he did back in the day. And Hercules and Amadeus were, this is not too much detail, but Hercules and Amadeus were one of the few heroes to ally themselves with Hulk during World War Hulk. And so they wanted to, as one does with event comics, they wanted to spin up other titles from that. And so they came to us with doing, so it was a weird phone call, like, we want you to co-write Incredible Hulk with Greg Pak because he's too busy to do it himself. And I was like, great. And they said, well, except that it's going to star Hercules. What?
That's so weird.
So, and I knew nothing about the Marvel Hercules. So we ended up doing this, and then a couple years later, after my time at Marvel was more or less done, Valiant came up to me at New York Comic Con and said, hey, do you want to write Archer and Armstrong? And I was like, sure. And then I went home and Googled Archer and Armstrong. I had no idea what it was. And then I read it, and I read how crazy the Barry Windsor Smith run, because he basically created those characters in the original Valiant in the 90s. I was like, oh, okay, this is another buddy comic. This is kind of like Incredible Hercules. So I started doing it, and then when my Archer Armstrong came out, Tom Brevoort, who's the executive editor of Marvel, told me the story that I had no idea about. When they were first discussing whether or not to do Incredible Hercules, and they were like, they couldn't decide whether or not it would work, Tom was like, oh yeah, it's just like Archer and Armstrong. And it's like, oh, okay, well, so they based Incredible Hercules and Archer Armstrong, a comic I'd never heard of before, which I then later got to write,
because I wrote Incredible Hercules.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So it's a totally.
That's a great piece of full circleness.
Yeah,
It's not really
it's
full circle.
snake eating its tail.
Yeah.
You know?
But now, if anybody listening is hearing Amadeus Cho right now, and you're not aware, he's kind of pertinent right now. He's a member of the Illuminati.
Outside of the fact that he's just one of the
Right
best
now.
Marvel characters that come out.
He really is.
He's
And
in season new Avengers.
kudos to Fred for fleshing him out a lot too. But you should probably check out Incredible Hercules if you're finding him interesting.
If you read the last two issues of New Avengers, I'm like, who the hell is this smart kid?
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
post-World War Hulk, Incredible Hercules.
He was
the
in
one.
Secret Event. Not Secret
Mighty
Mighty
Avengers.
He was in Mighty Avengers for a while too. He was in. He showed up in Civil
After
War.
Secret
He was in
Invasion.
that first run of Savage Wolverine.
Yes.
That Frank Show did.
All this is
No
true.
relation.
Oh,
We know it's false.
Absolutely.
It's true.
Nice.
So you guys working on anything else out? Like you said, Action Presidents, right?
Yes.
I
Right
know
now.
that I know that there's a George Washington issue.
Right.
Yeah, that was like a giveaway last year.
It
Or-
was.
We did it for an organization called Reading with Pictures,
Yes.
and it's actually in a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Oh,
they
so,
they
yeah.
have the
Yeah, we
textbook
have-
here
we
at
have
Tom
Textbook
Jones.
But yeah, we've always had the eye on doing it as a series, but we kind of use that as a proof of concept. But we've been shopping around and figuring out our options.
Is
and-
Taft next?
It's like amazing.
The Incredible Taft.
And the bathtub.
I think you just heard Fred's brain.
James K.
No,
Polk.
I love Taft. I wish Taft was next.
James K. Polk. That's the great one that no one ever talks about.
So Chester Arthur, surprisingly.
But we have plans. There are plans.
There are
to
plans
put
that we
to
cannot
have
discuss.
more that we cannot discuss.
Secret plans.
That's awesome.
Secret president
We
plans.
like
And
stories.
pants to match.
And pants to match. Yes.
I mean, I see, Dark Horse did the hardcover. They did the dollar issue one. So
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And
More-
there's a dollar issue of Archer Armstrong.
They like
right
it.
now.
We
Archer
like
Armstrong
and we
number one.
like them.
Yeah, we love
So
Dark
is there
Horse.
Dark Horse action presidents
No,
No.
in the future? No.
No.
different publisher.
Okay. Gotcha.
Good publisher. Another good publisher.
Niffy.
Which if anybody picks up Action Philosophers, you actually also get a preview of your new book, right?
Oh, and the $1 issue,
Yes. Yeah. I've got a new book out coming out in November called Resurrectionist. It's about it's my first creator-owned ongoing since The Silencers, so it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And it's about people who can summon and become their own past lives. It's a crime series that cuts between ancient Egypt and modern day, where a bunch of tomb robbers get killed doing a heist back in ancient Egypt. They reincarnate all over the world over and over again in different bodies for 3,000 years trying to pull off the same heist.
Wow.
And then now in 2015, it seems like they'll only be able to do it.
Wow. So now this is an ongoing?
This is an ongoing starting in November.
Fantastic. Wow.
FOC's on Monday.
That sounds really
We're recording this.
And is there any more Brain Boy in the way? Because Tony's a huge fan, and I
Just
like,
wait before
Oh,
you
yeah.
go on to Brain Boy, because I love Brain Boy. Who's the artist attached to Resurrection?
The artist is Maritza Rosenweig, and Moreno Dionisio is doing the colors, and those guys are amazing. They're Italian, as you might be able to tell from their names. They are absolutely amazing. I actually got to finally meet them at New York Comic Con for the first time, which was totally awesome, and they are just killing it. They're going to be
Which is amazing.
huge
to me.
after this.
It's amazing to me how, it's the norm now where people collaborate and they haven't even met
Yeah,
each other.
it's tough when they're in Rome and I'm here, but no, it's totally it's super exciting.
But back to your previous.
Well, since Project Blacklist is actually finally coming together at Dark Horse, like characters are finally merging.
Right.
Is there any more future Brain Boy plans in the future?
We're talking about it.
Okay.
I think that the whole line, and Brain Boy, for those of you who haven't read it, is about a psychic Secret Service agent who prevents psychic assassins from getting near the president and other dignitaries, and it's a psychic spy thing.
Which was it was a Charlton comic?
It was a
Yes,
Dell
it was
comic.
Dell comic.
A Dell comic.
We were looking through stuff and we're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the early 60s, created by Gil Kane, among other people, my all-time favorites. And so it was a public domain character that Dark Horse got the rights to, and asked me to redo it, and it's just been super fun.
Yeah. I love the fact, and I think I emailed you or I sent you a message on Twitter when Herbie showed up.
That's right, yeah.
God.
The Fat Fury.
Oh my God, I was just like.
Someone
He texted me. Like, picture of the page, like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
Like, if you were in the vicinity, I would have hugged you.
I don't know if you noticed we have a
Oh my
Herbie
God.
vinyl figure by a register.
Yeah.
I eat a
Excellent.
lollipop.
It's very appropriate.
No, I got in touch with you and I got in touch with Evan Dork. And
One of the
also,
most bizarre fan letters we got was from a guy who wrote it as Herbie, and
Oh, that's awesome.
and one in it was
Oh,
like,
wow.
is this person the problem? No, I mean, he might have mental problems, but I think he's trying to do a Herbie thing.
Yeah.
That's great.
Herbie, for probably most people listening to this who have no idea what we're talking about, it was this American comics group character. It was a gag strip about this fat guy named Herbie, who was somehow the most powerful being in the universe.
Yeah.
Women loved him.
Mhm.
John F. Kennedy would ask him for advice. He would go on these crazy adventures that he would just kind of. He was almost like Mr. Magoo in the sense that he would just sort of walk through adventures.
And it would just happen.
And it was perpetual sort of deadpan. And so I was trying to come up with this villain in Brain Boy, and it just sort of
His
occurred to me
ever-present
that-
lollipop.
I think to give the best example is the one page in my mind is at Kennedy going, "Thank you again, Herbie, you saved the day." Him going, "All right," and then the last panel is him flying on a giant eagle off into the distance.
Right.
That's a great one.
And Jack
No, that's Herbie. It's just
Yeah.
It was definitely a surreal strip, without a doubt.
But what made you bring him into it? I mean,
it just fit, like you were trying to think of something and
Yeah, I
it
was
just
trying to
kinda
get
hit
something
you.
different. I mean, because
that's
Brain
different.
Brain Boy was dealing with this other psychic assassin who could send out geists, we call them. They were sort of these Doctor Strange has the astral projections. This guy could shoot out 100 astral projections at the same time. And so I was just trying to come up with a guy who just kind of had to sit there and not do anything.
see, like
And he could fight you and kick your ass.
my thought process was I picture you sitting there in your home on your couch eating a bowl of Fruit Loops, watching Seinfeld, watching George get out of some fucking bullshit for no reason, and thinking, "Oh my God, Herbie! I've got it for Herbie."
I wish that's better than what actually happened. But yeah, something like that.
I wish more
Something
ideas
like
came
that.
from that stem of like.
What's that?
I wish more ideas came from that like role of like situation.
That's just how your mind works. That's how my best ideas go. Watching Seinfeld reruns and eating cereal. Yeah.
Joke's on you, it was Fruity Pebbles.
I needed a guy who could just sort of sit there
Yeah.
And win.
and kick your ass. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
That's
picked
how
the
I
best
got
one.
there. Yeah.
And one of the other many titles that you're writing right now, it seems like there's about a dozen of them.
It keeps me on.
Yeah.
Wait, 1 second. I just want to finish what I was saying. So, I had sent Evan Dorkin a message on Twitter, and I told him what you did, and his message back was, "He did what?" Question mark, exclamation point. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
No,
I can surprise Dorkin. I know I'm not wasting my life.
That's true. No, I was gonna ask about Magnus Robot Fighter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fight the robot, not Magnus Robot Fister.
Yeah, it's a joke. Is that only book where we can sell the porn store?
Yes,
I'm
it
sure
is.
I'm sure I could.
And how did that project come about?
One of the editors on Incredible Hercules is this great guy named Nate Cosby who packages a lot of books for Dynamite, and he knew that I worked for Valiant. I happened to be going out drinking with him that the night that he basically had a meeting about doing the Gold Key books, and he was like, "What about these Gold Key books?" And I started talking about them, and I was like, "Except the one thing that really doesn't work is Magnus Robot Fighter, because they're robots and cares. We've seen this a million times, but if you did it this way, and if you did this, and if you did that, and then by the end of the evening, I'm like, I'm writing Magnus Robot Fighter. If you give it to anyone else, I will murder you. Don't find your family, yeah, it's been a huge joy to do.
That first issue, just the setup that you provide, and it's 180 degrees different from Torok, which is 180 degrees different from Solar.
Yeah.
Is there any plans to kind of weave those characters together, or are they each going to be their own standalone book?
Well, I think technically they are in the same shared universe. I mean, we had done discussions about it. It's tough when Solar is modern day, Turok is set in 1000 AD, and Magnus is set essentially in 4000 AD.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they all definitely live in the same universe.
This is just a personal question because I'm a fan of the character. Did you bring in Howard the Duck and Small Zombies on your own accord?
I did
Or was
not.
that-
I did not. I love Howard the Duck. One of my biggest influences is Steve Gerber. In fact, like the script format I've always used comes from an unpublished Howard the Duck script that Steve uploaded to CompuServe. Anyone here remember CompuServe back in the 80s?
Whoa.
Dating myself.
I do.
Excellent.
Probably the only one.
We're not the only old fucks at the table.
Go to technology conventions, I know.
But I've been to museums. I know where CompuServe is.
Yeah, I've read books.
Oh, jeez heavens.
Is that rain?
More rain.
I'm in the evacuation zone. But I'm one block of the evacuation zone, right? But Dave Gabriel, who's the main sales guy at okay. The thing you need to know about Marvel Zombies, people, is unfortunately the Marvel brass do not like it at all.
Okay.
So when I started the Marvel Zombies franchise, it was Marvel Zombies 3, which starred Machine Man and various robot characters, because they would not let us use actual Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Wolverine, the movie characters. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it all worked out for the best, but the brass is terrified that, Jimmy's going to say, why is Spider-Man eating Mary Jane's face, which is totally understandable, I guess. But, and so we always had to find some trick to get them to greenlight series, and my editors tricked the folks at Marvel to do Marvel Zombies 5 because we were going to add Howard the Duck into it. And it made perfect sense to me. A, I love the character. B, we came up with this conceit that the zombie hunters were working with this agency called Farmer, which was the alternate reality monitoring and operational response agency. Can't believe I remembered that. You could have made Hammer stand or something. And Howard obviously comes from another dimension, so it made perfect sense.
Well, it's just really easy to pop him anywhere.
Yeah.
You kind of walked out of a bush once.
But no, I wish I could.
He was on Earth.
I wish I could totally take claim to that, but that was not me. That was David Gabriel.
CBLDF annual this year, you did Karate Bot.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I did not write that. That was written by my 7-year-old son.
That's awesome.
Wait, he wrote it? So
he wrote the story and I drew it. It was like Lauren Sankovic, who's the editor of that, came to me and said, like, you wanted me to do a story for it. It was going to team me up with a writer, and I said, well, but the whole theme was that it was going to be an all-ages book, and she knew I was a dad, and I had kids, and that were into comics and stuff.
Which is what a dad means, being a dad.
Yes, pretty much. I've had 5 of these. And my son is constantly coming up with these crazy ideas. And he said, I have this idea for and this was before I was approached to do the comic. He's like, I have this idea that, what if a robot had 2 brains? And and if he loses one brain, he becomes really good at fighting. And this was his idea for a story. I'm like, that's crazy insane. And I wrote it down, and I filed that away, and then I realized, and then when she came to me with this story, I was like, no, wait a minute, I think I have a story.
Wait, so at the time he was 7?
At the time he was 5.
At the time he was 5.
And I'm constantly writing down these ideas of his, because I want to take them. And he's not a very good artist, to be honest. But he has these crazy ideas, and so Lauren came to me and said, I want to do this story. She's like, I know, maybe she's met Luke, and she's like, oh, maybe he's got some idea. I'm like, he can totally write a story. I'm telling him. And so I talked to him about it. I told him what the theme of the book was about. So it was about censorship and all this stuff. And I said, I really like that character you came up with this monster with 2 brains. Can you do you think you could have a story for that? And right on the spot, he came up with a whole story.
Really?
And I wrote it down, and I sent it to her, and she's like, this is adorable.
Was it pouring out of him, and you were like, slow down?
It just came right, exactly. It came right out of him. And I wrote it down, and I structured it a tiny bit. But literally, he wrote the whole thing.
Awesome. Wow.
7 years old.
That's
And
so
I drew it.
So does he get the credit, or?
Yeah, he's in there. And in fact, we did a signing at Jim Hanley's Universe last week, and he was there
so cool.
signing copies.
That's amazing.
So his first.
And what did he say afterwards?
He's like, it was okay. He's like, I'm tired. It's 9 o'clock. But, yeah, he had a good time.
That is so cool.
But it made him the biggest, most popular kid at the bus stop the next morning. He was like, I did a comic book, and it's got Image Comics on it, and all the other older kids are like, oh my gosh, this is real.
Yeah.
So
Was that your first work with CBLDF? Or?
No, we've done a few things for them before. They've reprinted comic stuff.
Yeah.
And I've done a few things for them, like
They
sketch cards.
They reprinted our Frederick Wortham story
Yep.
in their Free Comic Book Day book. They do.
Yep.
They did this year.
So I don't know. He might be the youngest professionally published comic writer.
Did he come
Go
up with the
Guinness.
title?
That was the one thing, is that that's my only contribution I came up with. I named the character.
Right.
There's only one person I can imagine actually fighting for that title. That's the child that writes Axe Cop.
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, I think he is
Ethan
younger.
Nicole,
He is
yeah,
younger.
Malachi.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
actually
it wasn't
his son
like kind of an
younger,
action.
actually.
He was starting when he was 5.
Yes.
Yeah. So
because
there you go.
that child started 5, but that was years ago.
Yeah.
So now,
That was a while ago.
Currently.
I like that. Yes.
Now he's all washed up.
I'm waiting for him to be like, I don't want to do this no more.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
That's awesome.
I'm just curious, as far as any of the action books, especially the philosophers. What did you use for reference? I mean, just like Google you know.
I did a lot of Googling. Fred is really good at finding reference. Anything that he wasn't able to find, I somehow was able to find. But I mean, for the most part, it was, you know, a lot of these people are, you know, that existed before photography did. So I just sort of made it up. You know?
Yeah.
So whatever looked fun, whatever made a fun visual.
So is that anything that you guys? I know obviously Resurrection is anything that you guys personally is really important to you that you want to plug or let people know about?
I'm also doing like a lot of artists, like a lot of writers have a stable of artists. I actually have a stable of writers, and I'm working with my
We're
friend.
all his bitches.
I'm working with a really funny writer named a good friend of mine named Brady Hendricks. We're doing a webcomic called Little Classics, where we're basically doing the action philosophers treatment, but to classic literature.
Okay,
And,
awesome.
It's a newspaper style comic strip. We already went through Little Women, and now we're in the middle of doing Romeo and Juliet. We're going to follow that up with Dracula and Wuthering Heights.
So they're online already?
They're online already, yeah.
Where?
It's at lilclassix.com.
Okay, great.
Lilclassics.com. And we took a little bit of a hiatus, but we're coming back soon and stronger.
Okay,
We're like crazy.
how long are they? Are they like a few panels? Or?
Well, each comic strip is about like Little Women ran 28 strips.
Okay.
So 4 panels each. You do the math. Yeah, that's about what they do. We have between 30 and 40 is like our goal for each.
That's awesome.
Each piece of work, and with lots of jokes, but totally accurate to the story.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay.
Well, I can take off this. You guys aren't going to go from anywhere from the source material.
Yeah. We're not going to stray far from the source material, but you know, anything that we can make fun of, we will.
Cool. That's awesome.
I do want to ask you guys, what's your favorite strip comic that you used to read?
Bloom County.
Or still read?
Bloom County, hands down.
Okay.
Yeah. Without
That or Clavin Hobbs, you know.
Yeah.
For me, it was Calvin and Hobbes. I think.
Yeah.
Far Side and Peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
Farside and Calvin.
Yeah.
Farside like killed me when I was younger.
Yeah. No,
Bloom County definitely pushed me into my sense of humor.
I mean, I think one of the best strip people working today is Kate Beaton, who does a
Oh, yeah.
comic strip called Park of Akron.
Uh-huh.
Just burned through a bunch of them today.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
It's a
She's
perennial at
excellent.
the Eisners, isn't it?
Yeah, she's
Oh
amazing.
yeah. That book, my son always sees it in the store, and he thinks that because it's very similar to this, like in tone. He's like, "That's one of your books, right?" I'm like, "No, look at the name. That's not me." I wish it was.
It's not how that works.
What about you, Fred? Anything?
Well, I guess I'll plug my longtime pal and co-writer Greg Pock and I did a book from Random House called How Make Comics Like the Pros that just came out last month. It's basically it's a nice big coffee table book. It was illustrated by Colleen Coover, whom I heard you guys mention
Small favors.
Yes. Earlier in the program. She did the illustrations for that. What we did was
We have it. I think we sold out.
Yeah. No, it's doing really well, and we're super psyched. I left you a bunch of postcards with the store.
Cool.
But it's basically, it tells you how to create your comic from idea to writing, drawing, lettering, inking, coloring, printing, pitching it to publishers, marketing, online presence, all that stuff. It's super nuts. And the fun part about it is Greg and Colleen and I create a comic, like a YA fantasy comic, in the actual book.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually creating the comic while we're showing you how to do it.
Okay, cool.
So check it out.
One last question is, and not for the kids, because I've asked that before with different creators, but just because being at Comic-Con recently, what advice would you have for people who are a little more on in their years and they continue to get that table at Comic-Con and they're trying to push that book, that one idea, and they're pushing it and they're pushing it? I mean, what sort of advice would you give to somebody like them?
Make comics like the pros. Christmas is coming up, you guys. It's tough. I mean, I know Ryan and I both individually and collectively spent a lot of years at a lot of Comic Cons, sitting lonely behind the table with nobody coming up.
Having concepts and comics that nobody wanted.
You just got to keep. I mean, I think maybe the main thing is, this is a good thing for pitching in general. Always come up with more than one idea. I mean, you sometimes get stuck on this is it. Like you've decided this is the concept that's going to launch me. But I think you need multiple concepts because let's face it, a lot of the stuff is out of your control. It's who you're pitching it to and what time you're pitching it.
Yeah.
So I think you need to keep generating ideas. Don't abandon stuff if you don't have to. But you need to sort of keep up. Ryan and I, this action philosophers thing was something we literally did just as a joke. Because we thought it was funny.
and here we are on your podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
We never would have known.
It was the
right?
10th anniversary.
And with a 10th anniversary edition,
Hard
and
cover.
making
Yep.
us feel old. Oh,
Yeah.
here's the postcard. So this is main comics of the pros.
There you go.
In postcard form.
Yes. You can't learn much.
The book is much bigger.
Or to make comics like the losers.
Make comics like the skinny.
Yeah, I find myself at cons going up to those people that I've seen year, and and I go over and I talk to them a little bit, like I try to, because I feel bad.
I mean,
You
you know,
wanna be the-
also,
you wanna be the cheerleader.
also,
Like, I
frankly,
wanna,
I mean,
go
another
over
way to approach it is cons are not a good place to be noticed for the first time.
Right. I had no idea.
I mean, the odds of someone wandering in to a con and discovering you is extremely slim.
Yeah.
I mean, that said, Steve Ellis gave silencers to Mark Nietzsche at Marvel, and that's how I got my Marvel gig, but that was sort of a little different circumstance. I mean, what it really comes down to is, do people trust you, and can you prove that you can do the job? That's kind of what it comes down to. So, I mean, I think if you're spending a lot of money doing cons, that energy would be better spent building a web, do a webcomic, man. I mean, when we were first starting out, that was not really an option because of bandwidth, and everyone was using dial-up, so doing images was a little rough. But, I mean, I would take full advantage of all social media, Tumblr and everything else, and not focus so much on Comic Cons, because that's a rough, it's a rough retailing environment. I think we all know, as a retailer and also as a creator, it's much easier to sell someone a new thing if they already know you. It's very hard to make a new customer with a new product. It's much easier to sell a new thing to an old customer. That means. But you know what I mean? Like it's sort of economics 101. It's very hard to just kind of show up and expect people to kind of stumble across you. It's really
When there's so many people to look at.
Yeah, exactly.
And I even see the returns from cons going down for people like us. Even for people like us who've been doing it for forever. We have stuff that people want and buy. It's
Not
like,
this year.
Well, this year was good, but I mean, for the
$30
long time,
hardcover this year. So.
But I mean, it has gone down, and the web is the place to go.
I mean, I know like what we do here is if I've got somebody who comes and they've Xeroxed a book, put it together, and I'll say, hey, you want to do a signing? And they're just like, what? But have them do a signing.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is their family and friends are going to come. They're going to tell their friend, I'm doing a signing. What? The family and friends are going to come. We do it on a Wednesday where there's a lot of other customers in the store, and then it's like, wait, well, why are all these people standing around this person?
Yeah.
And they come over, they get curious, and they end up picking it up. I mean, that's what we
But that's
can
different
do
than a
as
convention,
retailers,
right? Where there's 30 or 40 people like that.
What's that?
Yeah.
That's different than a convention.
Right.
So many times you walk past 8 booths that have a crowd of people and wonder, what are these people?
But I mean, for me,
Right.
that's just been my idea. Anybody comes with me with, a deep, small, like grassroots mini comic, do a signing.
Right. Well, I mean, the creator's best friend is a motivated retailer. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I mean, you guys are on the front lines, and we need your support to survive, and vice versa. I mean, that's just the way it goes. The difficulty becomes how do you get from total obscurity to that level where a retailer knows if I give a customer this, he or she's going to appreciate it and come back for more. You know what I mean?
I mean, my hope is when we have somebody coming up, was Mary Sagona?
Yes.
Mary Sagona came in. I can't remember.
She has her books are both on the mini comic shelf
Books
right
are-
now.
Okay, cool.
Little mini comic shelf.
My thing is
Tales of Lente.
Tales of Lente, right? Is hoping that somebody like that comes in and they're feeling disheartened, they do a signing, and they get kind of re-energized, and maybe find the energy to do something else, and maybe find something they maybe didn't have before, and I don't know. I wish everybody would write at least one cup in their life. I'll read it because that's what I do. I have no interest in writing or drawing them. I just want to fucking read them.
That's great.
I'm a peddler.
You read everything.
God damn it.
Fred, you were supposed to talk about cosplay.
Oh yes.
right.
We'll end it with the amazing cosplay. That
One of the most
Fred saw.
definitely the most amazing thing I saw at New York Comic Con this year, and one of the most amazing cosplays I've seen ever, was a guy dressed as Ronald McDonald Thor. He was in a Thor outfit that was yellow and red, beard, clown makeup, and his hammer was a box of chicken McNuggets.
Did he have a bright yellow beard to match the wig?
I believe so.
I saw him.
It was a natural beard too. He dyed it.
Clown shoes.
That guy was on the escalator behind me going into the thing, and I felt like a rock star because everybody was like, "Look at that guy!" I was like waving. I looked behind like, "Oh, it's him."
Truly amazing.
It was pretty awesome. That one was awesome. He was good.
I had a moment like that at Comic-Con, like I think 3 or 4 years ago, where I was on the escalator and all these people looking and they're waving, you know, and I was like, hey, like, what's going on? I was like, hey, what's up? I'm like, I don't remember you shopping at my store. And oh my God, yeah, you have to get that on camera. That's amazing. And then I realized that right behind me was Kevin Smith.
It's the best Kevin Smith cosplay I've ever seen.
Thank you guys so much for filming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you guys. I really loved having you guys, and of course, you'll be back.
Yeah,
We will.
And I'm glad that I brought you with pizza to stay for the podcast.
Pizza Paris
Always works. Always works.
Yeah. Just when we post it, make sure you retweet it. That's all we have.
Yeah, no problem. Let us know.
So.
No.